Is everybody ready?
I am.
Okay, so as a warning, this is going to be a little bit of a first for many of us, mostly me. We're not huge fans of live coding just because that can go wrong very easily, just as a warning. So instead, the plan is I'll give a short presentation. I'm going to recreate the scenes for how to set this project up, and then go through the code a little bit. Not too much. It won't be too hard. And then we're going to have a game. All right, welcome. So this is your first 3D game in Godot. Today we will be making something like Doom from 1993. Yes, the really old one that has like flat sprites and textures. More accurately, we will be making something more like Heretic, which used the same engine that Doom did, but set in more of a sword and sorcery setting. By the way, if you want to follow along, you can find the starter files in the general channel. So lots of stuff going on here. One of the coolest things, in my opinion, this is like one of my favorite techniques. If you've ever seen a 3D Kyle game, you know I use this everywhere, is billboarded sprites. And that's just a fun way of saying you use a flat texture in 3D space to save resources. And Doom used this for enemies, for items. It's really a great technique to save on the costs of 3D modeling, not only for actually making the 3D models, but rendering them in real time as well. We're also going to get just a touch of modular level design. Godot has this wonderful node called a grid map. And with a grid map, you can make modular terrain pieces or buildings, anything you want really, decorations and so forth. You can put it all together like Lego pieces. It is a little underbaked, so it does have limits, but it's still pretty useful to rapidly prototype something. So that brings us to the question, well, if you're going to be making something in 3D, how do you move things in 3D space? Well, we have these fun tools called matrices. And when you first see them, they're like black magic. What the hell is going on with this little circle here? It looks like you're about to summon a demon or something. But I assure you, it's okay, don't panic. All this does is describe very precisely how to move objects in 3D space, whether it be moving them, translating them, rotating them, or scaling them. All those things can be described with that small list of numbers. And then another thing we're going to take advantage of is something called a raycast. Now, this is a very interesting mathematical object that lets us determine if something is in a straight line. And they're used everywhere for lighting calculations, in an FPS, if you don't care about... stop that. Suddenly the sound's working. Anyway, so raycasts, what are they? They're basically lines. And so if you don't care about projectiles having an arc, they're really good for a very simple FPS because you can detect what is being collided with and act accordingly. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been learning about all sorts of different systems: input, character movement, physics, animation. I'm going to put it all together for you guys. Our Doom clone is going to have 3 main parts. There's going to be one root node called game. It's going to have a group of enemies, a level, and the player. And the way they interact, I'll explain that. The composition of the player is as such. We use a character body node, which can do things with Newtonian physics, velocity, and so forth. That's what actually moves. And in order to interact with the world, we need a collision shape. It's going to be part of a group we call player, and we're going to add a raycast object to it. That is itself a node. Then we need a camera, and then we need a variety of UI nodes. And lastly, we're going to give it a sound effect. For the enemy, it's fairly simple. We also need a character body. It needs a collision. It's going to have a billboarded sprite, and we're going to give it a sound as well. So putting it all together, we should be able to create something quite nice. And let's do that now. Okay, so this is what we're going to be building towards. I can run that. And then we've got some enemies. You can shoot. Cast spells.
If you make the enemies float, they cannot be shot. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because you can't move up or down.
More technically, why do you think that is?
Because
With...
your hitbox is higher up in the air past your raycast.
Exactly. Okay, so this is the scene that we're going to be recreating here. Whenever you start a project, there's a few things you want to do. You want to create all your folders. For this, I'm going to call this tutorial scenes. And that's where I'll be doing all my work. And in that way, you can also make an assets folder and a script folder. Assets, scenes, and scripts are usually what I start out with. And then next you'd want to go to the settings. Under application and run, you can set what scene is default. Really quick, let me just create a new scene, and I'll call this tutorial game. And then tutorial player. And tutorial enemy. So that's all we need. So by default, it created some 2D scenes with node 2Ds, but we don't want that. So we're going to go right-click, change type. We're going to go node 3D. And then we're going to give it a few extra node 3Ds as its children. We're going to call this one enemies. You can press the plus button, or you can press Control A to add a new scene. Another node 3D, and that is going to be called level. And then later on, we'll add the player, but I'll show you how to do that. For now, there's a few things we can add right off the bat. So add a mesh instance 3D, and this is going to represent our ground. We'll make a new plane mesh. Go over here, set the size, 64 by 64 meters. And then we can set the material, new standard material, and then we can change the albedo. If you're familiar with making materials in Blender or Maya, same idea. So I'm just going to give it a green color, maybe blue. Yeah, let's go with blue. That's quite nice. Okay. And then if we hit play on this scene specifically, not a whole lot is going to happen. Why is that? Because we haven't added a camera yet. But before that, we want to add a sun. We can have that under level. And we can also add a sky. So real quick, if we just add a camera to our scene, we should be able to now detect, there we go, light and a sky. But we don't need that camera right now, so we're going to delete that. Okay, so we're almost there with our level. One more thing I'm going to add is a grid map. And the grid map, like I was saying earlier, is the object that is going to allow us to paint with our modular tiles. And there's a few things you have to set up for the grid map. Under cell, let's change this to 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. And so that makes it so that the size of each cell is going to be correct with the meshes that we give it. Let me save that. And that, until we get to the player, basically covers it for the environment. Let's set up the player. So I'm going to change this to a character body. And I'll call this player, tutorial player. Go ahead and save that. Okay, a few things we can do right off the bat. You can go over here, right next to the inspector, while clicking this node. You can go over here, and next to the tab for signals, there's one called groups. Now, you can create a group, call it player, and whenever you're doing any code that refers to something called the player, it'll include this. Why might you want to include multiple players? say you're making a game like an RTS, and you want multiple different things to respond at the same time. You could easily also make a group for enemies, and say, for example, you want... say, for example, you want all of the enemies to be deleted at the same time. That is something that you could do to iterate through every object in that group. It's kind of like throwing it into an array of all of the same type of objects. Okay, so a few things we have to add. Go Control A to add a collision shape. Control A to add a camera. And also a mesh. So a few things. For the mesh, we're going to create a capsule. Actually, I just remembered. You don't even need a mesh for this one because it's first person. What you actually want is just the collider. So the collider, you're going to make a capsule. And then you can move it up where it's at the right position there, using Control and then using this green doohickey there. You can go to the camera and go to the transform, set it to 1.5. And so what you'll see is the camera's going to be right there. Imagine this is your self looking. That's going to be the position. And then the next thing we want to add is a raycast 3D. This, we're going to move the transform also to 1.5 meter. And that's going to put it right at the center of the camera. And then we want to set the target position to 0, 0, negative 1000. And so what that's going to do is create a very, very long line. And it's going to detect anything colliding straight ahead. This is to simulate what it would be like to shoot a gun sort of instantaneously. Great. Okay. Next thing we want to add is a canvas layer. This is where all of our UI is going to live. So for all the UI components, you usually want to start with a control node. This is the sort of 2D version of all the other types of nodes. Okay, great. So we will call that hand. This is the hand that is going to be casting the spells as your wizard. And then before we add a child, let's set that anchor to the very bottom of the screen. The next thing we want to add is an animated sprite. 2D. It usually goes as follows. Anything in 3D is going to be red. Anything for UI is going to be green. And anything related with 2D is going to be blue. Now, the reason why you can use a 2D thing here is because it's just going to be a child of that control node right there. So, okay, great. This is going to be where we do our animation. Let's set that up now. So over here in the inspector, you want to go to sprite frames, create a new sprite frame. And down here, this is where you can set all sorts of stuff. You have this view where you can create an animation. The first one we want to create is called idle. And we're going to press this button right here, autoplay on load, and loop through the animation. In order to add frames to it, we're going to press this square button, and then we're going to search through our assets and find the correct image. This is going to give us the opportunity to pick one of these. You can choose the setup of how the sprite is arranged. There's 4 sprites and then 1 in one row. So we're just going to do the one hand. Now that's a bit small. So what we can do is click on it, go Shift Control, and grab the corner. And that'll increase it uniformly. So when you're playing your RPG, this is going to be the hand that does the spell casting. Well, how do we do that? We're going to have to add another animation here. And I'm going to call that Cast. Shadow Wizard Money Gang, we love casting spells. So now that we have our second animation, this one we do not want to loop indefinitely. So we're going to unclick that and then go here. We're going to grab the same one. Now, instead of starting with the normal hand, because we've already got that one, we're going to start with the first frame of animation and then go through them and then end at the same one the idol has. So in that way, there we go. You can see it's animated correctly. Great. That is the animation we need to do for our hand. The next thing we want to do is go back to the canvas layer, Control A. We want to add a color rectangle. Now this right here, we're going to go up here and press that right there, center the screen. So what this is our crosshair. We want, let's see, there we go. And then we can even go over here to make it a little transparent. So that's going to show us right at the center of the screen, which is, remember, where we put our raycast. So anything that aligns with that crosshair is going to be where the raycast will hit something. Great. I'm going to save that. I'll call that crosshair. And then the next thing is we would like to have some screen that is displayed when you die. So great. We can go back to canvas layer, add another control node as a child. We're going to call this death screen. There's a few things we're going to add to this. We're going to make the screen itself take up the entire screen. We're going to add a panel, which we will, there we go. Something like that. This is what's going to be displayed when you meet your untimely demise. To that, we're going to add a few different things. A label. This is going to be the text that is displayed. There we go. Let's add that to the top. And then let's also add a button, which I will add to the bottom. Now, we can add the text to it, reset. And for the label, we can go, you died. We can add a font as well to make it a little more fun. And we can add a size to it. Let's go 32. Let's go even bigger. There we go. Isn't that fun? Okay, and then let's adjust the position of that a little bit. Great. Okay, you died. That's not so good. But it's not the end of the world. Now, we only want this to appear when you die, not by default. So what we can do is go to the death screen and toggle the visibility of the whole thing. And that's pretty much it for the death screen. There's one more thing we want to add. Control A. Oops. Control A. There we go. We want to add an audio stream player. Not the 3D one. If you do the 3D one, that will change it based on proximity. This one will play pretty much the same volume wherever you're at. And then in our assets, we can go lightning spell dot wave. If we try playing that. Oh. Well, not sure why that's playing, but we'll figure that out later.
Why it's not playing?
Why it's not playing.
Isn't volume on 0?
Oh yeah, maybe. The why. Let's try that again. There we go. So you get a little lightning spell sound. Okay, so that way you can really experience what it's like to be a wizard. Okay, so next thing I'll do is I'll go back to the scene we were making, and at this point I can go here and go Control-Shift-A, and this will give me the opportunity to add a scene to the game. So in this case, that would be tutorial player. So now, if everything worked, we should have our player in the scene. Now let's go ahead and play that and see what we get. Okay, so this is what we expect. I have not added any code to handle movement yet, so this is pretty normal. We'll do that shortly, but first, let's go through and do the enemy.
Control S for any scene?
Yes, Control-Shift-A. So this scene we created before, we can change its type to a character body, 3D. That's going to be the root. We'll call that tutorial enemy. And there's a few things we want to add right off the bat. Control-A to add a collision shape. Just like before, we can create a capsule shape. Grab this green thing, go Control-Shift to bring it up. Add another node. It's going to be an animated sprite 3D. All right. And this one's quite special. And I'll show you why in just a moment. We can add sprite frames. Edit them here. Let me see. What was this called before? Called that. This one just has one called idle, and another one called death. Very straight to the point. Idle, and one called death. Okay, idle we want to set to autoplay, and then for the sprites we can add in here, go here, and this is going to have 2 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 horizontal, 2 vertical. And I'll show you why that is in just a moment. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are going to be the 4 frames that play on idle. Now for death. Oh, before that, let's bring this up so that it's actually flush with the ground. And actually, it's a little big right now. So we can go R and reduce the size a little bit. So it's more in line with the capsule shape. Here we go. So it's going to be on the ground. And then we can play it, and this is the walk animation that he's going to have. / idle. Great. Okay, let's do the death one now. So same process, add frames. Let's just sprite 2. The reason why I added so many blank ones is because I want the opportunity to go 1, 2, 3, and then start this animation. The reason why that is I want a small delay, but to give you time to cast the spell, and then that's going to happen. So basically the way this works is it's going to have a very small delay, and then start this explosion animation, and then it's going to end on this blank one, so that when you kill the enemy, there's no sprite to be seen. So we add those 10 frames, and let's not have that one loop. Let's test it. There we go. And that works. One more thing we need. We want to add a sound to him, just to be sure. Yep. So Control A. Sound. Oh wait. It's audio. There we go. So Audio Stream Player 3D. This is going to give us the opportunity to have a proximity-based sound. So the closer you are, the louder it's going to be. You can change both the radius at which this operates and also the overall sound. For audio, you can add various buses. So, for example, if you wanted one for sound effects, you could add a new bus. But I already have one for sound effects, so I'm just going to set that one here. That would be, for example, if you wanted to make a menu where you had sliders for each of the different sound effects, maybe music versus effects versus the master volume. That's what you could control there. And then you can also control the volume in decibels. Let's lower that a little bit. And that should be good. Let's go there. There's one more thing that I wanted to do for the sprite. So currently, it's not giving us that billboard effect. Thankfully, that's actually something built right into Godot's sprite system. So go over here to the inspector, go flags, and then billboard, currently disabled, enable Y billboard. So in the editor, you can see now it's always facing the camera. Excellent. Bada bing, bada boom. We're almost there, guys. So in our tutorial game, now under enemy, we can go Control-Shift-A and go tutorial enemy. And that's going to add right at the origin. So let's offset it a little bit. Let's put it in view of the camera. Let's test that again, see how it looks. Great, so currently still don't have any movement code, but that's okay, we're gonna add that momentarily. And we have our guy. So that about covers it for scene composition. The next thing we'd like to do is to ensure that all of our input is correct. So go to project settings, you can go to input map. Now, these are all things that I have already added. So move forwards, move backwards, move right, move left. But if you wanted to add a new one, say for example you wanted to add controller support, it's very easy to do that. All you have to do is go over to this little plus sign and then press whatever key you want. It's going to listen to all possible inputs, and then it'll pop up and you just press OK. It's a built-in version of Unity's new input system. Very sweet.
You're attacking me.
Yeah, really, really easy. Okay, so a few things we wanted. I just set WASD for the movement. As a matter of fact, in order to add left-hand support, we can go through and add arrow keys. Move backwards, down arrow. Move right, right. Oh, wait. Sorry. Right. There we go. That's right. And this is left. Okay, so now, if you wanted to play left-hand mode and use your right hand for arrow movement, you could do that. I set cast to the left mouse button, exit to the escape button, restart, R, and for testing, you can kill yourself with the K button. We won't dwell on that too long.
What button is it?
K. All right. So we have our scenes composed. Quick review. We've got a game, which has everything else we need. We've got the player, the enemy. Let's hook it all together. So I have in the scripts folder player.gd. You can just drag that there and then open that in the editor. Let's see. One of the first things we always want to do when we're looking at a script is make sure that the references are correct. So we need a reference to the animated sprite 2D. You can drag that over or control drag and it'll do this for you. But this is good enough for now. And then just to make sure these are correct, I'll rename this to spell sound effect, just to show that it's different. So for shoot sound, we're going to drag this over spell sound effect. Raycast 3D, same thing. So all of these should be correct. Great. Okay. I'm not going to go and rewrite all this. That doesn't sound very fun. So I'll just go through and explain what each thing does. So we extend the node character body 3D. And then we want all of the relevant nodes in the scene referenced. We create constant for speed and mouse sensitivity. These will determine some physics stuff. We want to tell if you are currently shooting and if you're currently dead. That'll help us determine how to move forward. There'll be conditional logic later. The ready function, this is going to be called to set everything up. So we're going to set the input mouse mode captured. The animated sprite 2D, we are going to connect a signal, which, did we cover signals last time, by the way?
Not sure. I think we talked about it, but not like
Okay. Super simple. You can go to any node. Let's go Raycast. Go to the inspector tab right next to it. Signals. You can look at every single possible signal and then hook it up to a script. So for example, if I wanted something to happen on ready, I could double click that and then add that to the script. Let's see what happens there. So what that does is it automatically creates a new function for that to happen. Right now it doesn't do anything. Pass is just a junk word that says move on, don't do anything. But if you wanted to add logic for things to happen, this is where you would do it. And because this isn't necessary, I'm just going to delete that. Okay, returning to the ready function. So that's going to connect the animation and tell the script when is it done. And then we're going to go and find the death screen and connect the death screen button there. Okay, now on input, if you're dead, don't accept input. Just return. If you move the mouse, we're gonna do a magic spell that goes like this. So you're going to take the relative x motion of the mouse. That is just a list of numbers that tells you how much it's moving in that frame. Multiply that by the mouse sensitivity, and then we're going to use that to determine how much your character rotates.
Oh, yeah, real quick, are the blinds bothering anybody else? They're very heavily bothering me, but it's not like they have like a stool to go up and change the little. There's a button over here. It's gonna be kind of loud for a bit, but.
That's okay. I think it's the small ones, the small white ones.
Small ones at the top. Oh wait, yeah. I was gonna close the window to make it not do that, but we
Hey.
could also do that.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate your guys' patience, by the way. I promise this isn't going to take too much longer. Okay, so in the process function, that is what runs every frame. And frame, because your computer might not be as fast as your friend's computer, that's not going to be always consistent. So we use a variable called delta. And delta is simply the time elapsed since the last frame. We can use that in order to make sure that every calculation for animation, for movement, and so forth is always consistent across every machine. But for right now, don't worry too much about that. This is where we handle input. If input is action, just press exit, restart. If you're dead, don't do anything. If the cast button is pressed. And then each of these is going to correspond with a method that we have set later on. The exit button is going to have a special method called getTree.quit, and that's going to exit the entire game. Okay, let's look at some more functions. The physics process, like process, will run very consistently. However, physics calculations are not done 60 times a second, because physics is pretty complicated. That would bog down your processor very fast. So if you're dead, just return. This magic right here just creates a direction of movement based on whatever keys you're pressing. The direction is going to take that and tell you which direction you need to be moving. It's going to do some math to set the velocity in the x and the z direction. Very important, by the way. In Godot, the up direction is typically on the y-axis, whereas the horizontal axes are z and x. So if the direction, then, in other words, if it's like anything at all, you're going to, the next frame, move by a certain amount of speed in that direction. Else you don't do that. And then move and slide is the function that handles all of that movement for you. It does all the physics calculations and so forth. Restart, you're just going to reload the current scene. Very useful for testing. And then in the cast function, it's going to check if you can shoot. Well, if you can't, then just return. Don't do anything. And then it sets that flag to false. Animated sprite 2D.playCast is sent to the animation node. So that basically initiates the animation being played. Shoot sound.play, that is going to play the spell sound effect. And this is where a lot of the magic happens. If raycast 3D is colliding and raycast 3D.getCollider.has method kill, then we will call the kill method. Now that's going to be a method in the enemy, and we'll see what happens later. So this simple function, shoot animation done, that just changes the flag. If you can shoot, then go ahead and do it again. And then the last thing is kill. That changes dead to true. It shows the death screen, and then it changes the input mode, so you can click that button and then reset the game. Great. So let's test our game scene and see if that did anything. Okay, so we can rotate, we can move back and forth. Excellent. So what we have so far, working as expected. Let's do the enemy next. Take enemy.gd, and we're going to attach it to tutorial enemy. Save that, and we're going to press that to open it. Okay, let's go through this. So for enemy, this is going to extend character body. This is going to take the animated sprite, and like before, let's just make sure that reference is correct. That should be correct now. On ready, I think we've covered this before. This is a very special keyword for variables that basically states, don't pay attention to this until it is fully loaded in the screen. That way, the timing of loading various things in your scene doesn't get messed up. If you do it at the wrong time, it might return null. You don't want that. And then export, this is what allows us to edit within the editor. So variable, move speed, attack range, very good. All things you want on an enemy. And then we want a reference to the player. Now, remember how we added the player to this group called player. Now this is where this is coming in handy. So it says get tree.get first node in group, and then that group is player. And so any node in the player group, which our current player is going to be considered player in this case. Now, another technique we're using here is strongly typing a variable. You can just say any type of generic variable, or you could say specifically you want a character body 3D by just putting a colon and then that type. Okay, and then we want to know if the enemy is dead. By default, it's false because we want the enemy alive first. So we've got some magic in physics process. So if dead, don't do anything. If the player is null, don't do anything. And then we get a direction. That direction represents the difference between the player and the enemy. That is sort of facing towards the enemy. And then it uses a normalized function. And essentially what that does is it creates a vector of length 1. That's very useful if you want to apply that direction to other situations. For example, the velocity. So what this will do is very simply move the enemy in a straight line towards the character. towards the player at a certain speed. So this is probably the simplest possible pathfinding implementation for an enemy. Because it will get stuck on things. It's not going to reroute, but that is something you could add later on if you want. Again, like in the player script, move and slide is just going to do all the physics calculations. And then we're going to call this method attempt to kill the player. This is what actually tries to trigger the death screen for the player. So in that method, attempt to kill player, you need to get the distance from the enemy to the player, because that's going to determine the range at which that enemy can harm you. And if it's within attack range, it does this other stuff. But if it's not, then it does nothing. So the next few lines will basically create a query with the raycast to determine if that is within range. And then if it is, then you trigger the player method kill. Likewise, the enemy also has a kill method that just sets the dead flag to true. It sets the death sound to play. It changes the animation to the death animation. And then it also disables the collision. And all of that together should be everything we need to put this all into one scene. So what we can do is go back to this scene here. All right, so a few things are happening. That guy is moving towards us at an alarming rate. He's very scary. I don't know if we're gonna make it, guys. But we have this special tool in our tool belt. Magic. Whoosh. Oh. Let's see. Play. Oops. Hold on. I didn't set something correctly up here. And it's this. This needs to be named death sound. Let's try that again. Okay. Kablooey. All right. So that guy is Dunzo's. But let's see if that other situation happens. Oh, no. All right. Something's wrong here. And I think I know what it is. He's not colliding correctly. There's a few things we want to set on the collisions. For the player, we want to go to, let's see, where is it? Collision. Okay, so we want to set where the player is and what they collide with. You can set the layer, which is where it is, and mask, which is what it checks for. And I think if we just do that, save that, and then collision, check and see where this lives. Collision, that lives on layer 2. Check for both layers. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so that's what the problem was. Now, unfortunately, you have died, but it's okay, because we can reset. Great. So we have what is very generously called a Doom clone. Well, that's wonderful. It kind of looks like ass, so let's change that. Okay, great. So let's assume you are a 3D modeler. You've created lots of really cool modular assets in your favorite program of choice, say Blender, and you want to add them all at once to Godot. Well, there's a way you can do that. So this is something I modeled for a different game, Catscape. You can play for free now on itch.io, kylein.hio/Catscape. But for the purpose of this tutorial, it's going to work great. We're going to make what's called a mesh library. It's a library that contains all of these meshes and all of these collisions. That's going to be super useful because you don't have to set each one up manually. So the way you do that is you would want to go, so pretend I just did my modeling in Blender and I imported this GLB file. So I want to go new inherited scene, and that's going to have everything here. So I've already done this, but you can go to Scene. Let's see. Which one is it? Export. Here we go. That's the one. Let me try again. So if you wanted to make a mesh library, you go Scene, Export As, and then Mesh Library. And then you save it, and then that will create a library you can place down in a grid map for each one of these pieces. So let's exit out of that. We don't need to save that. We're done with the enemy. We can go to this mesh instance, or sorry, this grid map right here, and we can load that library. Okay, great. So, wonderful. We have the ability to paint, Oh, that's not correct. That texture did not load correctly. Okay, I might have to go through these steps again anyway. Okay. New inherited scene. All right, so we've got that. Example, scene for tiles. Okay, and then go project, export as mesh library. We're going to do tutorial mesh library. There we go. Let's hope that worked. So you can go back to this grid map, load, go back to assets, tutorial mesh library, and hopefully, oh no, that didn't work either. I'm not sure why. Oh, I remember why, because certain tiles are just broken. Oh. That's fine. We can still make a pretty cool scene here. So this grid map tool allows us to do some fun things here. That's not quite aligning with the plane we made. So I am just going to go to the transform and lower it slightly. There we go. So I lowered it a little less than half a meter. So it's right on the very top of that plane. Great. So what if we wanted to make, you know, a little maze for the player and the enemy to try to navigate? That's cool. Wow, look at that. You can add decorations. Very fun. Another fun thing you can add is a sprite 3D. Like before, this is going to give us the ability to make little decorations. We're going to set the scale of that to 8 meters, or 8 units, rather. And we don't necessarily like flat things, so we're just going to enable the Y billboard. And great, call that a tree. And we can duplicate that to create our little scene. Excellent. So now, if we play this, there's going to be a few more things going on here. So this guy is going to get caught, but we have this lovely environment in which to do our wizard battle. There we go. And so if you've been able to follow along this far, congratulations, you just made your first 3D game. Woohoo!
I think we should call this Womb. No. It's like Wizard Doom.
Wizard Doom, dude. Womb. All right, so...
Well, you're also a caster, so it could instead be... No.
No.
Oh, shoot, right.
All right, and then just for funsies, let's go ahead, duplicate a bunch of those. All right, so, oh no, all these wizards are after me. Boom, 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 Boom.
Oh, we'll say one thing. The main problem is that there's no more wizards after you kill
Boom.
wizards.
That's true. All right, so there were actually a few things. I'm about to close up with this, but I'll just leave you guys with this. So if you are able to follow along, or you just want to go ahead and take the existing project, which is called game, everything should be fully functional within the starter files. So if you just take this, review the code, there's a few things that you can do. And I'll leave you with these challenges. So using the existing raycast object, try to make some kind of interaction system. Say, for example, with like an object or an NPC, where you look at it and you're able to interact with it. See if you can make an item pickup with just the collision system and maybe like those 2D sprites in 3D space billboarded. Using the mesh library here, try to make more of a level here. You can add buildings, you can make like a cave. Just do whatever you like to your heart's content. Add new enemies. As you saw, the enemy was basically just a sprite sheet. Now, if you wanted to just replace the art and make a different enemy entirely, you could open this PNG image in your art program of choice and just add a different enemy. That's something you could do. Edit the enemy such that instead of being hostile, it's a friendly NPC. And last thing, just edit the enemy so that it's got different behavior, maybe give it more life, so you have to hit it a few times before it dies.
Or give it a spell of its own.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just bashing you with its staff. It's a wizard.
All right, so with that, I'm going to end this here.